Welcome to the Iron Self podcast, where we jump into health, fitness, mindset, and becoming the best version of yourself. Today with your hosts, Mike and Kayla Minion. On today's podcast, we welcome Stepanka Kuralova. She is a clinical hypnotherapist and women's guide who works with clients from all around the world and helps them reclaim their power, confidence, and inner glow. She specializes in helping her clients overcome fears, insecurities, and anxiety that is holding them back from following their desires and feeling magnetic. She believes in bridging science, practical tools, and mindset principles with spirituality, the perfect blend for a modern-day woman who desires to have it all while staying true and connected to herself. Stepanka is a qualified clinical hypnotherapist, emotional freedom technique, and neuro-linguistic programming practitioner, angelic Reiki healer. Please welcome Stepanka. On today's episode, we have Stepanka joining us once again, and today we are chatting all about emotional intelligence and manifesting our goals. Welcome, Stepanka.
Thank you. I cannot wait for us to be talking everything about emotional intelligence. It's such a big and important
huge topic, and I think it's like almost all-encompassing. So where would you like to get started on this topic?
So because it is such a big, wide topic, I feel like it would be really good to just explain how emotional intelligence can help us. Because I feel that when we hear the phrase emotional intelligence, it can sound boring. I'm not gonna lie to you. It can honestly sound like it's a boring topic, something perhaps from a management or leadership book, because very often emotional intelligence gets mentioned when it comes to management trainings or becoming a leader of your team and so on. So I find that sometimes people think this is not relevant to me. But what I found from my experience is that emotional intelligence is actually a concept that is so overlooked. So overlooked in the personal development industry. And I find that, sometimes other tools don't work for us. And the reason behind that could be because we are not coming from the right energy space. And the emotional intelligence, emotional resilience are missing, and then we are not getting the results we want. So just very simply explained, emotional intelligence is relevant to all of us. Because if we look at the brain, very simplified, version, probably not very scientific, but we could say that we've got two brains, the emotional brain, and we've got the rational brain. And you are probably familiar with this. So the emotional brain would be the limbic system. It's impulsive, it's way older than the rational brain. The rational brain would be the neocortex, which is really good at coming up with ideas, planning, goal setting, and so on. But because of how we evolved as humans, the emotional brain is just faster because it's older, so it will bypass the rational brain. So as much as we think like, oh, we are these rational beings making these logical, intelligent decisions, the reality is we are hardwired to make emotional decisions without us even knowing about it. And we get told like, don't get swept by emotions, calm down and make a rational decision. And we often think we are making rational decisions, but there is always emotion behind that. And that's okay, because what truly matters is how we respond to those emotions. Whether these emotions are in charge of us and we are not in touch with them, we cannot understand their messages, then they might be in charge of our life, and it can feel almost like we are this pendulum. That's just such a good way to explain emotion. So this pendulum moves from one side to the other, and if it moves all the way to the far end of emotional repression, for example, when we are suppressing and ignoring our emotions, then of course it's a pendulum, it's bound to move all the way to the other extreme, which is either emotional overwhelm And the emotional overwhelm can be like, you don't know what to do. You are just so confused. It's so overwhelming. You can't deal or cope with the situation that's in front of you. Or it could be like you explode like a volcano. And it's almost like that last straw. And then, people who are completely innocent will experience this eruption. So I find that what we really desire here is to be more towards the middle, and let that pendulum to move and swing, and that's okay. Our emotions are meant to change and fluctuate, and we evolve with them as humans. But when we stay in the center, allowing and accepting our emotions, processing them, seeing what's happening, expressing them, that's also important. Biting your tongue over and over again, you will erupt like a volcano. So this is really our goal. And this might sound like, yeah, all makes sense, but we often don't acknowledge or are not aware of, like, this is impacting our entire life, including our relationships, our achievements, career, communication skills, and your energy as well. So if you are someone who does believe in the law of attraction, and that we are the creators of our life experience, this is also an important aspect. And that's where I feel like emotional intelligence is overlooked, because we have all these manifestation teachers out here in the world, but not all of them speak about, what do I do when things are not working out? Like, what if I have done all these exercises, then I have written everything, and I am visualizing every single day, and the manifestation is not coming? Because that's when the emotions take over. That's when we are more likely to procrastinate, self-sabotage, get stuck. We let the old patterns to come back, and we let them to rule our life. So I find that emotional mastery is really about that, about overcoming self-sabotage. Because if emotional intelligence is missing, you will protect yourself because you don't trust yourself subconsciously, right? You don't trust yourself that you are strong enough to handle disappointment, to handle getting hurt. And then it's almost like, deep down, I'm not sure whether I can even handle manifesting this, whether I can even handle accomplishing this goal, because both, I might get really hurt if it doesn't work out. And can I cope with failure? Do I trust myself enough? Or it's the opposite. Can I handle
Do I deserve that
success?
success, right? A lot of people doubt whether they even deserve that to begin with. So everything you've said so far has been absolutely beautiful. It ties in beautifully with everything that we always talk about, and really being able to feel your emotions but not becoming your emotions, right? Like you were talking with that pendulum, from the one side where it's like recluse, no, not feeling any emotions, all the way to the other side where it's like alarm bells going off, everything is going crazy in your life. And finding that middle ground, living in the gray is what we always say, right? And not being one or the other, but being able to regulate from one to the other.
Yeah, and if you look at the power of now, they talk about becoming the observer, right? Becoming the observer, I think, is the key to emotional intelligence, because you need to be able to acknowledge and observe the emotion that you're feeling.
Recognize it, yeah.
And we always talk about bringing that emotion back into your body. Where in your body are you feeling that emotion? Because when we have that emotion in our body, we can begin to breathe through that emotion and bring that energy back into the present and back into the earth, right? Sometimes maybe the overwhelm or the anxiety that we might be feeling might not be ours to hold. It might be, what are we feeling as a greater society, those kinds of things. And so noticing that emotion, where is it sitting heavy in your body, and beginning to bring your breath and awareness to it to send that emotion back outside of you, right? Our emotions have energy, and we talk about this all the time, and energy cannot be destroyed. Energy can only be transferred. So when you're talking about the pendulum, if energy can only be transferred, if you explode, that's a transfer of energy, right? It's going out one way. If you are holding that energy on the other side of that pendulum and you're holding it inside of you,
That starts to create that dis-ease.
it creates that dis-ease in your body. And so being able to release that energy, but what I'm going to say is in a constructive manner, meaning like I am feeling, happy, sad, angry, mad, whatever, but I'm going to observe it, notice
feel it, don't become it.
And allow myself to feel it. And maybe that means I need to set a timer for myself. I'm going to feel really sad for myself for the next 5 minutes. And then in 5 minutes, I've had my time. Or, giving yourself those boundaries, I think, is really important. What is your take on that?
Oh my goodness. I resonate with everything you have said. I totally agree, and I love the way you explained it. And I think that actually embodiment, moving the energy, transmuting that energy is a really big piece of emotional intelligence. Becoming the observer and like, okay, what do I do now? Like, what is the practical step? Because sometimes, all of this can sound like a really good theory, but what do I do? Like, what's the tangible thing I can do? And that's what you mentioned, like, energy cannot be destroyed. It needs to be transmuted. So I find that actually moving your energy, even literally like moving your body, can be a very helpful tool. And breath work, definitely a really big aspect of this. And I find that hypnosis can also really help us. And when people have been on one extreme of the pendulum, they can find it hard though. They can find it really hard to actually get in touch with their bodies and recognize what is present. And I noticed myself when I started working like years ago, probably maybe 12 years ago now, I came across, maybe even before that, I don't know. I started working with an EFT practitioner, emotional freedom technique, tapping practitioner. And she would ask me those questions. She was like, well, what do you feel? How do you feel about that? And I couldn't tell. It was like the most random question, and I found it so hard. And I remember I wanted to give up on that therapy with her because I just couldn't answer those questions. And now looking back at it in hindsight, I think it's so interesting that I was so disconnected. And I find that often the disconnection starts in our childhood or teenage years, when we don't get the education on what emotions are. Parents perhaps don't have the education themselves, and we cannot blame our parents, right? Especially like the generation of my parents, they didn't really have the resources like we do now. It wasn't as widely accessible and available, so it's never about blaming anyone. But I know, like, me, myself, and my clients, like, we often got told things such as, oh, if you don't stop crying, you're gonna be locked in your bedroom until you calm down. Or oh, have ice cream, eat, have something, have a cookie. Oh, you sad? Oh, why don't you have a piece of cake? That's gonna make you feel better. So often it's either like avoidance, like, oh my god, shut it out, like this, like crying, I can't deal with your tears, like you're gonna get punished. And doesn't usually come from a mean place. It can come from basically we don't know what else to do. And the other aspect is distraction, eat. And this is why we get so many people with emotional eating, right? Because it's, again, a great way to distract yourself. And I find it with emotional eating, it works in two ways. Literally, your body is so busy processing this food, digesting it, that it just can't focus on anything else in a minute. But it's also mind thing, distracting your mind, eating something, and then we create this connection like, oh, ice cream makes me feel better. But the reality is the emotion will be there. And eventually it will come back up to the surface.
Well, with trauma, so when we look at stress, trauma, PTSD, one of the biggest indicators of how that's affecting you is that desensitization, that disconnection from self, right? Like you almost feel like an out of body experience because you don't feel like this is your being. And so when we start to bring that felt sense back into that body, can I notice my toes, but whatever that might be, it can be just small little details to begin to bring that awareness back into the body. And so when you're saying, it starts in childhood, For sure it does. I mean, how many times have you heard like people say to a little boy, "Be a man, you can't cry. Men, little men don't cry."
That's my life growing up.
You know, or suck it up. It's just whatever, and we brush it off like you said. And so I think that that's where the disconnection starts. And then as we gain society, and you look at nowadays where everybody's living very, very stressed out lives, we're all very disconnected from our beings. So when we are consuming food or that distraction, it's really just like you said, just to kind of stop us from looking inward. And so one of the tools that I often will give a client to do is, I call it a 5 sense mindfulness technique. And so we bring our awareness back to our senses. Like, you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling anxious, you're feeling angry, whatever it might be, stop and pause for just a moment. I just want you to be present in the moment for a second and go, okay, what is something I can see? What is something I can smell? What is something I can hear? What is something I can feel? I mean, very rarely what is something I can taste. I mean, like that
Compliment.
yeah, whatever. But find those 5 senses that brings you back to the present moment, and suddenly you're more connected with your body, and you'll notice in that moment that the energy in your body begins to flow from top to bottom, bottom to top, equally on both sides of the body in that moment. And then as you become distracted again, that energy begins to flow differently, and you might be not necessarily carrying yourself the way that you wanted to, but it's going to be a different way in which your energy is moving forward.
I think one of the big things a lot of people do, and I was guilty of this myself too back when I was firefighting, if I dealt with some, like, I'm going to use the term shitty calls, I would keep myself so busy that I couldn't think, if that makes sense. And I think a lot of people do that, where if they don't know how to process the emotion, they just keep themselves busy. So if you see somebody that is just busy all the time, there's probably some stuff going on in the background. but really, because we don't know how to regulate those. We're not comfortable in those emotions because we've never been taught how to regulate those. So we just stay busy. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. You nailed it, Mike. Like, literally, like, we distract ourselves so much. And I find, like, a modern way of distracting ourselves is social media. Literally, like, scrolling up and down on the phone.
that is the distraction.
Exactly. And like, it's like people zone out. People zone out, and like after a while, like, who am I even looking at? And I find this is literally when anxiety is kicking in and they don't know how to cope with it. And I loved what you said about the 5 senses. Sensuality, which literally means being in touch with your senses, is so important. And there is this fear around, like, what if I allow myself to feel all of this? Like, that's what people fear deep down. And I always say, actually, emotions is, like you said, energy. And the less you fight it, like the less you resist it, it will move through you. There is this fear of, like, what if I get stuck in it? Like, what if I allow myself to feel this deep sadness, and I'll never get out of it? And it will stay there, and it will be present in my body. And I always explain this to my clients, like, it's like a wave of energy. And it will literally move through your body, and you will feel better. So working with one's senses is important. I guide my clients. It's a really unusual technique, but I find it works so well, is to look somewhere. Let's say look at a picture on the wall in front of you, and then imagine that there is a magnet behind each one of your eyes. And it's a weird thing. So you are, like, looking somewhere, and now you are visualizing there are, like, 2 magnets, or like a horseshoe magnet, in your head, each end behind one of the eyes, and you, like, put your attention there. So you practice this with having your eyes open, and then you close your eyes and you observe again what is happening, because sometimes actually what happens is when people close their eyes, even to practice meditation or hypnosis or something else, they zone out again. They leave that body again, and they are not present in the physical body, which is the intention here, to be truly, sometimes we have hypnosis and meditations when it's okay to be out there and, fly about with your attention, but with sensuality, embodiment, it's important to actually focus on the body. So, yeah, exactly. and to begin feeling safe. You know, after trauma, it can feel really unsafe to be in your body. What if these feelings come back? What if by being present in the body, I become more vulnerable, I become more sensitive, or it will be easier for other people to hurt me? So it's like the little steps of helping us to feel safe. And then, so with this technique, you then close your eyes again and you are practicing it again, just placing your attention and awareness behind your eyes. And it does feel really weird when you play with it, but then you just like, oh my God, I'm so present. And before I have my clients do this, I'll ask them, you know, on a scale from 0 to 100, how present are you right now? And there is no right or wrong answer. 100 means 100% present, 0 is like not present at all. And I had clients say 20 or 30. And then we do this technique and it goes up to like 80, 85. I had clients in my program, Emotional Alchemy, who like, oh my God, 98. It feels so good to be present. It's actually, wow, the body feels good. Like it feels very grounding. It actually does feel safe. And I love when you mentioned, Kayla, about like taking on almost like the collective emotions, or there's sometimes it's almost like a vibe in the air and we like take it on. Well, this is why being present is so important, because imagine your body is like a glass. I wish I had a glass. I only have my mug here. So imagine oh, there you go. So we have got a glass and is it half full? Yes, that's perfect. So we have got this glass and we've got water in it. And now it's maybe like 50%, maybe 60, right? So the 40% is empty. And it's with like your energy and spirit in your body. If it's empty, like there is like 40% is missing, then that's where you can take on other people's energies, because you are not present there yourself, because you are not grounded in your being. So you are more vulnerable, you are more open to take on other people's emotions, anxiety, thoughts. When you are truly present, when it's like 100 or even 90, you know, from 90 onwards, you are less likely to get affected by those things. So if I get clients who feel very sensitive to, I don't know, going to a family party, it can feel like, oh my goodness, I'm not sure whether I'll be able to cope with so many people, or whether, you know, like there's this person who always moans and complains, and I don't want to like get affected by that. Always share this technique. You know, practice this, really ground yourself in your body, and you know, when it's full, there is no more space left.
Totally. Yeah, we do something like that with our kids sometimes. So we call it like the rainbow technique. So if you're feeling like super emotional, or you're not sure that you want to protect your energy a little bit, so we'll draw a rainbow from one side of the ground up and over all the way to the other side. And this is your space, and nobody can enter your space without you allowing them into your space. So I love the glass half full, glass half empty visualization for that, because it's the same idea. It is up to you how much space you allow other people to take up within you and within your energy. I mean, how often are we busy running around and we're not paying attention to being present in the moment, and then all of a sudden, you know, your spouse is not in a great mood, or your kids are not in a great mood, or whatever, the people that you're around, and you're all of a sudden you go from being in this really high level mood where you're not really present to drained and not really sure why you're upset. And it's like, no, it's because you were not being present in your energy. You were allowing other people to take up space. And I like to call those people energy sucks sometimes, because they do. They want to, they're missing something, so they're sucking your energy to get that. But I mean, I know just from teaching group fitness, I've done it the other way, where I get, you know, revved up on other people's energy. When other people are energized and I'm energized, I can bring more energy to them too. Yeah. So, and I think it goes in both ways.
Oh, it does for sure. I was going to say that too. Like team sports, growing up my entire life, the whole team gets going, and you can feel that energy when everybody's like pumped and just jazzed for what you're doing. It's powerful. It's amazing. Like look at the Super Bowl halftime show. I was pumped for that because I'm a '90s kid.
It it's so true when you're talking about all of this stuff and the importance of emotional intelligence and how vital it is to feeling an emotion. One of the things that I often will talk to clients about is that when we're trying to get over stress, trauma, or just things that maybe happened in our past, that often those are like sticking points or sticking moments, thought patterns that keep coming back. I think that a lot of people think that they need to go back and relive that. They need to quote unquote work through it. And I'm like,
accept it for what it was.
Just
Move
accept it for
on.
what your memory tells you it was. But what often I'll say is, go back and give yourself the emotion you were looking for. So if you were feeling, really unloved or really unsupported, or, looked over as a child, for lack of a better way of saying that, go back and give that child self whatever it was that they were looking for. So they felt really unsupported. Like, just go through, close your eyes, visualize that child version of yourself, and give them a hug or send them love. Share that emotion that they needed in that moment, or show them how supported that you support them now. Because all of a sudden that memory goes from being this really bright memory to being super foggy, and all of a sudden you begin to take back your power in that moment, because you don't need to go through reliving everything that you felt there. You already felt that. Maybe if you didn't allow yourself to run or allow yourself to feel angry or whatever, you can choose to do that as well, but supporting yourself in that journey. And I think a lot of people are afraid when it comes to emotions. It's like, if I begin to open this, it's going to be a floodgate.
Bleed out everywhere, yeah.
Right? And it's true. If you begin to rip off band-aids, you might bleed all over other people unless you have a process set up to support yourself. And that's why I'm saying giving yourself that emotion. So I'm going to go back to this child version of myself when, I was 8 years old and I felt like nobody was paying attention to me. And I'm going to give myself the love and the support that I needed then. And just truly being in that. And you know what? Maybe that's one day. Maybe that's a couple weeks of spending time in that place. But then moving on from it and going, okay, you know what? I'm going to go into this future version of myself and see the belief that that person has or whatever, and I'm going to send more energy in that way. And seeing that you can actually, like, time is parallel. You can send energy in any direction that you want, but it's all based on your perception. So if we begin to change that perception, that emotional intelligence within us grows.
I love that. So beautifully said and explained. And funnily enough, like last night, I felt inspired to record a solo episode for my podcast about this, and I feel the same way. And I find sometimes it's the inner child, and other times it's the inner teenager who needed that support, and we can so easily go back and give them the emotional support they needed without needing to relive the traumatic scenario or whatever that was. Or I find that it can be really helpful to hear the words we wished we heard back then. So perhaps we were a little bit really confused, didn't quite understand what was happening. Now as an adult, in hindsight, I can see what was going on. I have a different perspective. I am more mature. I have got, different wisdom to my younger self. So I will do this in hypnosis or meditation. And it's a technique I use a lot with my clients, and I'll take them back and I'm like, just share, what you feel they needed in that moment. What is it that you truly needed? Like, was there an emotional reassurance, perhaps a feeling of safety you needed? And it sounds very simple, but it can shift so much. And we extract what we need from the past, and we can heal and accept the rest that we are no longer taking with us, if that makes sense. So I love that you mentioned that, and I feel that it could be something people can do themselves. Or if perhaps visualizing it feels scary or not sure how to start, I would even write it down. Perhaps there is a memory that comes up. So what would you say to yourself? Or
that's what I was going to say. A lot of people don't even know where to start with this, right? Because they think, in their mind, if they go back to these memories that they had, they're just going to be, like Kayla said, ripping the Band-Aid off and bleeding all over everybody. So for anybody that is looking at starting something, that's starting to build that emotional resiliency, emotional intelligence, where do you think would be the best place to actually start for somebody brand new, never done this?
If you're ready to make a change in your life, step into the best version of you, check out our Iron Self Transformation Program. Find more info on our website, www.ironbodycoach.com.
Yeah, so I would honestly start with something really simple, like pausing a few times throughout your day and checking in with your body. Okay, what is it that's actually present? And in this way, we are avoiding that huge buildup that very often happens. Another very simple and effective technique, which I believe all of us can easily do with our phones or laptops or whatever we've got, is to look up emotional or feeling wheel. And it's this wheel with different emotions, and emotions can feel really confusing, right? So very often we use words such as, oh, I'm stressed, I'm feeling really bad. And these are such overused words, and they don't, what do they actually mean? What does it mean? What does stress mean? It can mean anything. Does it mean you are anxious? Does it mean you feel overwhelmed? Does it mean you feel angry? Like, it's actually really interesting to pinpoint what emotion you are experiencing, because it's going to give you an insight into what is going on within you and what is the thing that actually made you feel that way. Because sometimes it can be our spouse at home, they say something, and all of a sudden we are like feeling all these emotions, and we want to shout or yell or say whatever, like, he made me feel that way. But when we look at the wheel of emotion, you might find that actually I felt insecure. I actually felt really insecure because he is going out without me or something else. But we will say, oh, he just makes me so angry, or just makes me anxious. Anxiety can sometimes be another word that gets sometimes overused. So I would start by checking in with yourself a couple of times per day. Okay, what is present in my body? Can I ground myself back into my body? Can I be present? Can I accept what is currently happening? And then using this wheel of emotions, when you Google it, it will come up as a photo or a picture image. You can download it into your phone. And when things are beginning to feel overwhelming, have a look at it. You start on the inside, where you've got the main 5 or 6 emotions usually, and you work your way out. And you will go to the outer part of the wheel, where you've got like the very individual emotions, and you will surprise yourself. And when you recognize what the emotion is, it doesn't feel as urgent anymore. It's almost like it takes the intensity out of it. And I would say like a third mindset shift, which anyone can do, and it's really simple, is to realize and recognize that all emotions are just emotions. There is no such thing as bad or good emotions. And when we label them, that's when we start resisting them. Oh, anger is a bad emotion, I should not feel that. Sadness is a bad emotion, I should not feel that. Let's suppress it, let's not feel it, let's push it down, let's pretend I'm happy. And this can sometimes happen to people who like, oh, I want to manifest my best life. I should not feel sad, I should be happy, because if I feel sad, what if I attract more of sad things? And I feel this is actually when we go into the energy of avoidance and almost like denying what is truly present for us. The thing is, it will still be there. It will be at the back of your mind. It will be affecting your life. So actually, you are suppressing not only your emotions, but you are suppressing your intuition. And then you are more likely to attract more of these things, because the universe, your higher self, whatever you would like to call it, wants you to deal with it and clear that energy. And what made a huge difference to me was to recognize that actually, being positive all of the time just doesn't work. Like, we are human beings, not robots. But also just think of some of the most incredible projects, organizations, books you have read. Very often it got started because someone somewhere felt an emotion which traditionally would get labeled as a negative emotion. So some of the most incredible projects or books were written or created when someone felt really angry because there was injustice happening in the world, or they felt really lonely, or they lost a loved one. So, when we lose a loved one, we can't label sadness as a bad emotion, can we? Because that just shows we were so connected to this person. We love them.
Yeah.
It's just so powerful to hear, you discuss emotions and the importance of feeling them and being within them. We are emotional beings. We are meant to be emotional. And I love that you said we're not meant to be happy all the time. And I think that, especially with social media, we look through and when you see everybody's success
It's a
reels,
highlight reel.
yeah, and you're not really seeing, those moments of despair, or maybe some people are only posting those moments of despair. So I think that there's like kind of that both end of the spectrum where it's like, no, we are meant to be, emotional, feel that emotion. But that's where self-compassion comes in, right? Self-compassion says it's common humanity. We are all suffering. Our entire experience of being a human is an experience of suffering, but we're all suffering together. It's that unity that each one of our spirits is connected together, and that you're not suffering alone. Your suffering degree might be slightly different than mine, and what you're suffering for might be different than mine, but we're all feeling that and going within that. That also means that we all have the ability to come outside of that. And Mike and I often will talk about, the language or the terminology that we're using in regards to our emotions. I am something lends way to, you can never be anything else. I am sad, I am depressed, whatever. But if you say, I feel sad, I feel depressed, that means that you could feel something different. There is other options out there. And I know when I was going through depression when I was younger, it was, I feel depressed, I'm going to listen to sad music that causes extra depression, and I only see the negative, and I was never seeing anything that was like bright shining. And it's really hard when you're in that headspace to see the light on the other side and to see that there is good. So all I'm saying is allowing that possibility to come out that there could be good. I mean, if we look at Dr. Emoto's water experiment, our body is 80% water. And so if we are filling our body with the words, the language, the music, the television, whatever that is consuming us is negative, then of course we're going to feel more of those I'm going to say less desirable emotions.
Yep.
Like, I don't want to label them good or bad, but they're just less desirable. Nobody wants to feel those less desirable ones.
Sad Nikki all the time.
Yeah. But then if we start to consume, more of what we nourish our bodies with, being, we're nourishing ourselves with positive people, with positive messages, maybe that means we need to take a social media break, listening to music that empowers us, listening to podcasts that empower us, all of those kinds of things. Then we begin to see more good in the world, because that is what we're consuming.
What you're surrounding
and
yourself
that
with.
is what the water molecules in your body are essentially absorbing. Again, it's that energy, right? But when we look at it from Dr. Emoto's perspective, with it being in the water molecule notion, you can physically see the changes under a microscope. So if you can physically see those changes, then I just want people to think about, like, what are the changes that are taking place inside of your body? I mean, we can physically feel the change when you go from sad to happy. You can feel that, right? Like, all of a sudden you're like crying, and then somebody makes you laugh, and you feel that energetic change for a moment. That's where the power lies, is within that moment to, like you said, transmute that energy to really begin to change our state. I mean, Mike and I we did a whole podcast recently on how to change your state and the importance of changing your state. But I think that a lot of people feel that, oh, well, today's just not a great day, I'm not going to be able to get out of this mood or whatever. It was like, no, you have that power to change it. That power resides within you, but you have to have that emotional intelligence to look at it from another perspective, to take a moment to breathe, to be present in the moment, because that emotion lives in the present, not in the past, not in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and language is so important. I'm so grateful you mentioned that. I love everything you said, by the way. It was so spot on. And like you said, like it's almost we identify with emotions. And I always encourage my clients to say, like you said, I am experiencing this emotion. I'm feeling it rather than labeling yourself. I am an anxious person. This is who I am. It's part of me. It's not. It's just an energy you are experiencing. So shifting your words it sounds simple, but it makes a huge difference. And I find that even avoiding words such as never, always, this is the way I
Absolute.
am, these are very strong, yes, absolute. They are very strong words. Like, and it's even when you describe other people. I hear my clients describing their partner. Oh, he never helps me. Never? Are you sure? Like, never, ever in your entire life, your partner helped you? I'm like, no, you know? And I always like, I always encourage them, let's do that. Like, be careful how you use the word always, because it literally means all of the times, never means like it never happens. So be careful with how you use them. You can use them in a positive way. Like I always, I'm always present in my body. That could be a cool affirmation, but I always mess up. That is quite strong. 100% every single time you mess up. Is that true? Can we question that thought? Can we question this pattern? And what I find is incredibly important and a huge piece of emotional intelligence is communication skills. Really mastering your communication skills, and as well, up level your relationships in an incredible way when you begin respecting yourself, your emotional state, but also other people's emotions, instead of taking everything personally. And words won't, when we think about it, yes, there is physical violence in the world, I don't want to deny that, but on many occasions in our lives, the things that caused us the most harm or wounding and emotional wounding were words. Something someone said to us, and it was so painful that, like, we are still recovering from that, as how painful certain things could have been. So really becoming self-responsible when it comes to words. Okay, well, if I am now here exploding, maybe I actually need to go to the bedroom first before we have the conversation. There is also such a thing as emotional flooding. And emotional flooding can happen in the midst of a conversation. And if you feel that's happening, emotional flooding is when, like, the stress, fight or flight response is kicking in. So you might find yourself breathing faster, you might be sweating, you can't concentrate on your words, your heart might be beating really fast, you might like see things blurry as well. Like, you cannot continue having this conversation. If this is an important topic, you need to take a break. And then it's important to communicate it instead of running away, because sometimes it happens, like it's unbearable. So we just leave the conversation, which leaves the other person like hanging, and they don't feel safe. Like, oh my God, are they ever coming back? What's happening here? It creates unsafety and in a relationship, and we don't trust each other. So communicating, actually, I need to have a cup of tea, or I need to go for a walk, and let's go back to this. And it takes about 20 minutes for the body to calm down from emotional flooding. So I find like all these bits are part of this bigger picture that we call emotional
I
intelligence.
love that you mentioned safety, because it goes back to like at the very beginning of the conversation. You also mentioned creating a trusting relationship with yourself and others, and I think that safety is the key to emotional intelligence. Like, it's kind of like the key that begins to unlock the door, and then the observer is the one that opens the door. Having safety within yourself, knowing that you are safe, that I am okay, even if it means putting a hand on your belly and a hand on your chest and giving yourself that affirmation, I am okay, I am present in my body, I am in a safe place, whatever that is, but allowing yourself to know that you are okay. Also creating that safe environment to feel your emotions, you don't obviously want to do this when you're on the side of the road waiting for the local bus or something like that. Where is a safe place that you can do this? Could you do this in your bedroom? Could you do that? Creating that safe environment to feel our emotions, to acknowledge our emotions. And when we're not in a safe environment, maybe that creating that safe environment just means bringing that awareness back to your breath, because your breath can keep you safe. Like, I am either a runner or a fainter when it comes to stress. So I'm either going to run away from it or I'm going to pass out. Mike swears that I was a possum in my past life.
And I'm the opposite. I go, if there's something crazy happening, I go straight towards it. And that's how I've always been.
And so when it comes to that, one of the biggest things that I do is I come back to my breath and I just count 4 in, 4 out, 4 in, 4 out. I literally will have no idea what's going on around me because I need to re-engage my person
fully present on the breath
to become back into that safe environment before I can actually be present outside of myself. And I think that that's important, is that I create that safe environment within me first, and then I can be present with outside of me.
Well, and that's something, it's very similar to what we say about like that loving relationship too, is like you need that loving relationships with self before you can give that out to everybody else. And it's the same thing with being present. You got to be present with yourself before you can start to share that out too.
That's such a good point. And I think this is almost like the inner or self leadership. I need to be able to lead myself through this emotional state, create safety for myself, within myself, in my surrounding. And then it's way easier to duplicate this in a relationship, in a partnership, in a romantic relationship, when we really want we want safety to be there. Like even in a team, you've got, team members, you want them to feel safe. You want them to feel comfortable enough to share certain things. So I definitely think it's the same. And I love how you shared like, okay, one hand on my heart, one hand on my belly. And I find that simplicity is key. It doesn't have to be complicated. We often overthink. We overcomplicate things. We think there needs to be a secret formula, like a 10-step procedure that I need to do in order to overcome this. But actually, simplicity is key. And even simple, gentle, compassionate self-talk can be so helpful when emotions run high, therefore intelligence is low. So being very gentle with yourself and say simple things such as, I will be okay. I will be okay. And an affirmation like that might sound like, okay, well, it's not anything special, but it's a match for where you at. Because if you freaking out, if you panicking, if there is fear present in your body, and all of a sudden you come up with all these fancy, extremely positive affirmations, your mind will go like, who are you kidding? Like, that doesn't feel true. None of this feel true. And this is exactly how I started diving into emotional intelligence. And it was when I was ill and I was really struggling with my health. And I was diving into personal development, doing all these affirmations, meditating and visualizing my body being healthy every single day. And it just did not feel authentic. I felt like, who am I kidding here? Like, I'm repeating, like, I'm healthy, I'm feeling energized, I'm feeling this or that, and my body was just screaming, shut up, that's not true, you are aching. Like, and it felt like there was such a big gap between where I was emotionally, physically, and where I wanted to be, and the affirmations, like, they were not a match for where I was. Or like, certain mindset techniques. And I find that even certain hypnosis techniques, I couldn't do them because I just felt so poorly in that moment. It was so hard for me to believe that things can go better, but I could get behind an idea that eventually I will be okay. I might not believe that I'm okay right now. I might not believe in the idea that tomorrow I'll wake up and all of those health problems will be gone, but I might get behind an idea that things can get better. And where the simplicity is.
I think that that's what we talk about a lot, where we create the I am statements or the affirmation in an action orientated motion. We had a business coach for a while that was like, set your business goals. I want you to read them every night. And it was like, I'm making $15,000 a month, and my body is like, no, you're not. No, you're not. I did it. I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to manifest my goals. This is going to come to me. And every night I felt like a choking feeling in my throat. It didn't sit well. And I was doing it, but I wasn't feeling that place. And so what we started doing is it's like, okay, let's create an action oriented. I'm taking steps towards my goals. What is my main goal? My main goal is to impact thousands of lives, to encourage other people to step into a best version of themselves. And each day that best version might be redefined. What is the best version of you today? Maybe the best version of me today is just the fact that I'm going to eat breakfast because I haven't been doing that, or whatever that is. But what is the action that you're taking towards that and creating that action? So I am, taking action towards my goals today, feeling that feeling in your body. Okay, that actually sits okay in my body. I notice that emotion in my body. And now I can move forward in that emotional state, versus it being that, like you said, that stuck feeling, like it feels kind of icky, it doesn't sit very well. But you can begin to manifest your goals in that way, because when it comes to emotions, I think that a lot of people need to begin to heal those, I'm going to call them wounds within ourselves, before we can truly begin to manifest going forward. Because if it feels icky, sticky, you don't believe it, then how can you begin to feel that emotion or that state of what it feels like to achieve those other things?
Yeah, and like the power of positivity is very powerful. Like having those positive affirmations and things that you're working towards, 100% a good thing. But again, like you guys are both saying, having it like so far from where you're currently at, I don't know a better way to say that, but like having it almost feel disassociating, that can be paralyzing in itself.
Well, and it can create more disassociation within the body.
Yeah.
Right?
It can, yeah. I call this, like, I talk about this in my program Emotional Alchemy, and I created like a whole story for my clients to remember it and really like lock it in and remember this metaphor. And I call it a bridging stage. You are on one riverbank and it feels muddy. You are covered in mud and it doesn't feel good. But eventually, as you start cleaning yourself up, you begin seeing the other riverbank. Ooh, and on the other side, they serve cocktails. The sun is shining there. The grass is green. That's where I want to be. That's where are my manifestations. How do I get there? Well, the gap is really big at this stage. So you start bridging, you start building your own bridge, and this is how you work your way up. And this is why it's never about the goals, but it's about who you become as a result of achieving those goals. And as you work on yourself, as you heal, like you become a different person, a person who is a match for those things, but at the same time, that's what needs to be celebrated the most, rather than this goal or achievement that's still incredible and I'm so proud of you, but actually how amazing it is that you are the one who created it and who you have become.
We do an exercise called the mandorla. So it's technically like a Venn diagram, and a mandorla is Italian for almond shape. So it's the almond shape in the center, and there's lots of like different metaphors for what mandorla can mean. But we'll do one side being like your old version of yourself, the other side being your version that you want to step into. And in the mandorla is everything in between, everything that you're taking from your old self and everything that's going into that new self. What are the best characteristics about yourself, so that you can see that bridging of the gap, that these aren't two totally different people. These are the same person, but there's just a meld in the center. And that's where we begin to do that. And then we redo it several weeks later, because then you can actually see that progression,
see the shift,
and you see that energetic shift within yourself. A year ago, I am not the same coach and trainer that I was a year ago, but I think that that's important, because we should be ever evolving. We should be learning and growing. Like, that is part of this wonderful human experience. And as we learn and grow and we find new pieces of ourselves, we begin to say, you know what, I'm glad I'm stepping morphing into this better version. I'm glad I'm showing up in this version, and that I can share my new knowledge or my new expertise with the world around me. And so that's like a huge, huge piece when it comes to that emotional intelligence. And like you said, it's about the journey, is being able to look back and see just how far you've come.
How big of a bridge you built.
Yes, and exactly how big of a bridge you've built and how much further you still have to go. I mean, there is no end destination. You're going to hit these the goals are more like milestones,
yeah,
right?
We talk about this with our clients all the time. It's like, once you hit that goal, what's the next goal, right? Like, this is your life. We get to keep working.
It's perpetual, right? Where there's always another goal. It's never enough. So celebrating those wins or those milestones throughout the process, but acknowledging the journey, because if it wasn't for this journey, you wouldn't be who you are today. And so often we, look back at our whole life and we're, all of these things took place in my life and I'm not overly proud of them. All of these things took place in your life for the greater purpose
for a reason.
Creating you into who you are. You don't have to like and love all of those pieces, but you have to accept them and acknowledge the fact that they have empowered you to be who you are today, and they have empowered you to make any changes moving forward towards the future. If you don't like that person, change one thing. Start with, maybe that person starts moving their body on a regular basis, starts going for a walk, and now all of a sudden being in nature makes you feel better. That changes our emotions. There's so much to this.
Yeah, gratitude, right? Maybe that new person practices gratitude. It's a beautiful thing.
But like you said...
Yeah, and this is what it is, isn't it? Like, being in the energy of gratitude while looking forward to what else is out there for us to explore. It's like balancing these two energies.
It's so true. It doesn't have to be these big changes, right? Gratitude. Pause. Just notice something that you're grateful for today. Find your breath. Notice your emotions. There's all these small techniques, and I think that we're all looking for like this greater thing to fall into our lap and go, this is what's going to change you. But at the end of the day, it's you that gets to change you, and that you have to be present within yourself and start with that loving, trusting relationship with yourself. I'm reading Pathways to Love by Deepak Chopra, and he essentially says all of the relationships that come into your life are a manifestation of your relationship with yourself. And so when we begin to have a more of a loving relationship with ourselves, that creates more of a loving relationship with those around us. And so when, maybe we're not super happy with how our partner is showing up, or how our parents or loved ones might be showing up in our lives, and I just encourage you to take a look at what is the relationship that you have with yourself around that, and creating more love and support for yourself. And you might notice that those relationships begin to change and shift.
Ooh, I love that. Yeah, and I always say it's never about like helping people to change those things. It's about changing your relationship with them, with those people, the way you view things, your perspective.
I was going to say more of a perspective shift, right? That paradigm shift.
Yeah, well, it's a chance to let go. It's like, I don't need to own this feeling anymore. I don't need to, own these other ways of thinking. I can let go of this. And in that letting go, the flow becomes real, and we begin to allow that energy to flow through us and not become stuck in us. And I think that is really what we're talking about here when it comes to emotional intelligence.
Yeah, perfect.
Oh,
full body chills. I love that.
What an episode today. Oh my goodness, there is so many golden nuggets in here. Thank you so much for spending the time with us once again, Stepanka. If people want to reach out to you, where can they find you?
I would say the best place is to go to my website, which is hypnocoaching.me, and it's where you will find all the links, my solo podcast episodes as well, where I share loads of things. I've got free hypnosis on there, all sorts of different recordings. I have got a free Facebook group and Instagram, and all the links are in one place on my website. So I feel just go there and
Thank you so much. We'll link it all through in the show notes. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Thank you for sharing your energy and your expertise. We truly, truly value having you on.
Thank you. I loved it.
If you loved today's podcast and want more information about Stepanka and the services that she offers, you can check her out at hypnocoaching.me or find her on social media under New Earth Woman. Thank you so much for joining us here today. If you love this podcast, please share it with a friend, a family member, share it on your social media, let others know about our podcast, because that is how we share our message with the world. Please stay tuned for more episodes. Bye for now.